Everyone, this is
Uh,
Osayi, and I'll let her do her own intro, but thanks for joining, and this is our second one of these. So yeah, I ask questions as we go along, open conversation. I'm excited to hear about looking professional during calls because I've been working from home so long. I feel like I need a little help in that area. So yeah, I'll hand it over to you.
all right. Hi, everybody. As Brooke mentioned, my name is Osayi, and I've been working from home for about 5 years now. 5, 6 years. I don't even remember. The days just keep flashing by and just going on and on. But I work in marketing, specifically right now in performance marketing, where I manage affiliates for different brands. So essentially, I'm sure you've heard of like the affiliate programs. And whether like getting your coupons with honey and all of that stuff. But essentially, that's what I do. So I'm the go-between, right? I work with the brands to figure out the best strategy to get those things done. And so here I am. And of course, I have to figure out how to look professional so that I can charge the big bucks and all of that. So I was just thinking about that, and I realized that it could be a challenge for different people, especially because you get so used to just putting on your pajamas and coming in. And for the most part, there's nothing wrong with that, because most times, as you know, if you're on video, no one's seeing your bottoms or anything like that unless you try to share it. But I wanted to break it down into three different aspects. And my understanding is that this is just going to be 15 minutes, so it's more of a conversation. So I'm just going to talk about the three different things. And the main thing is before the meeting, what can you do to prepare? And one of the things you want to do with video is you have to pay attention to your background. Yes, there are some software that you can use where it's like the green screen and everything, but as I've noticed, there's usually like a lag, whether it's a video, it looks pretty, but oftentimes there's a lag. There's just like some kind of a little bit of a glitch. So it's important for you to pay attention to your background. That's obvious, but sometimes I notice that people don't really see that because you get so used to your surroundings, so you don't really see that. The other thing that I would mention is also just remember your mindset. You might be working with people that are awesome, and you might be working with people that are not so awesome. So you want to prepare yourself mentally for the meeting, because when I talk about during and some of my tips and things that you can do, it's important to remember that your mindset is important, because you could go to the meeting and somebody bashes all your ideas. How are you going to respond to it, right? But if you prepare yourself, you prepare yourself that different things can happen. People might say whatever, you might be offended, you might be upset, then you're able to really focus. Then the next thing before the meeting is, I have all these notes here, is going over the notes or creating notes for your meeting or going over notes from the previous meeting. You do not want to come across unprepared, because if you want to look professional, you want to be prepared. You don't want to be thinking about, oh, I'm not sure what you said. Even if you have to open notes on, on your laptop or in your separate screen or something, go over the notes just really quickly. Even if you're sure that you remember everything, I'm sure you might forget something, except if you have excellent memory, which is possible. Just go over your notes and then make some notes and things that you want to highlight, so that when you go to the meeting, you are prepared, you know what people are talking about, and everything looks good. And then there might be some really important meetings, especially when you're not quite sure about the gate. Like if it's a decision meeting and you're not sure if you have a lot of people on your side, you have a lot of people who agree with you, then my recommendation is even having a meeting before the meeting, right? Like, since you technically are not going to go golfing before the meeting or something like that, those golf meetings. So you want to have the meeting before the meeting where you're trying to gauge the atmosphere. You're trying to gauge if this person is going to support you and in whatever it is you're trying to kind of get a decision about. So you have the meeting before the meeting. And then for someone like me, I have a daughter whom I had one phone call where they later asked me, so how are your kids? Because she can be like a multiple children, but she's just one child. And she's 5 years old and she's awesome. But if you have a child, you might need to speak with your child before the meeting, especially depending on how important it is and how casual it is. Like, let me tell you, I'm going to have a meeting and I really want you to figure out something else you need to do, or you might be creative and give them something to do just so that they don't interrupt. Yes, especially with COVID, everyone is patient, but it could also interrupt your train of thought. It can kind of interrupt the meeting. So as much as you can, if you can avoid that, talk to them, give them things to do, depending on how old they are. Of course, if they're much older, just like tell them, like, please be quiet, and hopefully they listen. And then afterwards, we'll talk about how you also reward them for doing that.
Oh, you're so much more polite than I am. I tell my
Well,
kids,
you know,
you have to be quiet.
so it depends, right? If you worked on your mindset and you're settled, then you could be like, please be quiet and whatever. So you can bribe them or you can threaten them. And you're like, you know what? I will kick you out of the house. I don't care how young you are. Just, you know, and there are times that you have to scream too. So whatever works, but just talk to them ahead of time, because they might be like, I didn't know, or whatever. And you know how they are. They're the best arguers. I'll use that word in the world. So talk to them about that. And then just about you, like whatever you need to do to feel more confident. Like you could decide, okay, you want to put makeup on. If you know, if that's your thing, fine, put some lipstick on or whatever, or put on your fancy shirt or the shirt that has the terminology that speaks to you, whatever. You just want to look, whatever your definition of like being professional is, especially for your industry and what you're doing. So of course, if you're in like tech, in the tech space or something like that, if you're talking to people who are in the tech industry, they might be more understanding of like t-shirt or whatever. But if not, just do what works for you. Now, during the meeting, I'll go into that. I'd say pay attention to your video. When you are, oh, you send your youngest child to the garden. Oh, that makes sense. That is brilliant. So when you're during the meeting, pay attention to your video. Like with Zoom, every now and then I look at my video to make sure that, you know, my laptop camera isn't like falling or falling that way. Just kind of pay attention to it, because I've seen when their laptop camera is falling and the person's not paying attention and I'm distracted. I'm not even hearing what they're saying anymore. So you just, you know, every now and then look at it, just like when you're driving, right? Every now and then you look at the speedometer, making sure you're not going too much above speed limit, because who drives speed limit anyway? So I just pay attention to it every now and then. Then one of the things is when you're in a meeting, it's a video meeting, try to look at the camera as much as possible. It's weird at first because it's like you're staring at the camera and you really want to look at the people in the meeting. But when you're the one speaking, or when you're trying to show that you are agreeing with somebody, you want to look at the camera so it looks like they're looking at you and, you know, they feel like there's eye contact even though there isn't. But it's always kind of awkward when it's like, oh, I'm looking over there and I'm talking to you because I'm looking at you, but it's just weird. And then you also want to be careful with your movements. You know, we have these little quirks, but it becomes a lot more highlighted on video. And Brooke, I don't want to pick on you, but I saw something and you were like, you know, like chewing your nails, and it just like stands out on video that I probably wouldn't notice in person. But those kinds of things. And there was somebody that I was in a meeting with and they kept fidgeting all the time. And it's like in person, it wouldn't be a big deal, but they're like, and so the strategy and then the thing and what we're going to do and the contract and the person. And I mean, the whole conversation, I was like, I'm not really sure what you're saying, but you're moving so much, you know? And it goes back to the other thing that I said, where it's like, pay attention to your video every now and then, because sometimes you're so passionate about what you're saying that before you know it, like this is where you're like, yeah, so I really wanted to tell you how awesome this program is going to be, but then people are looking at your nose hairs. So it's not like the funnest thing. You see my camera just moved and I noticed it because I pay attention to that every now and then. So
hey, can I jump in and add one thing?
Yes, please.
So I'm totally a hand talker, as you can see, and I'm 0% Italian, but I don't know where it comes from. But one of the things that being on a camera does is it really monkeys with the depth of field. So if you're really gesticulating, you see my hands are getting huge and they're like reaching out for you. So I try to think about that, like keep them close to me, and also small movements. Like you were saying, I was like a big movement is huge and distracting. Just little movements totally get it across. So.
Oh, exactly. Like small movements. It's interesting because when you're making a point, small movements are good. But when you are responding, you really need big movements. Because if someone is saying something and you're agreeing, you're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. They're like, I don't know if they like what I'm saying or not. But if you really want them to feel encouraged, then you're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Usually you're not moving your head this much, right? But on video, that's all part of making people feel like you're engaged with them. So you're making those, you know, really big movements. And then when someone makes a joke, you might be like, oh, that's funny. But when you're on video, you have to be like, that is funny. You know, it's not really being fake, but it's just that people don't see those small movements as much when it comes to engagement. But when it comes to like you're trying to make your point, then yeah, you need to make them small movements. So it's a little bit interesting in that. And so yeah, I talked a little bit about jokes already, and I think it just helps because we don't have body language to help us as much, even on video. So when someone makes a joke, as long as it's not super terrible, it's always nice to just say, oh, that was funny, and try to respond a little bit. It just engages with them, and then they're more likely to listen and be willing to do what you would like them to do and what you need their help with and stuff. Because in the end, it's about accomplishing a goal, right? We're not on video just to chit chat. This is just chit chat, even though we're trying to accomplish something. But if it's a meeting, you're trying to accomplish a goal, you're trying to get people to kind of agree with you or to do something together. And the best way to be able to do that is if we're all feeling like we're engaged and we're on the same team. The next thing I would say is I think smiling helps. I like to smile. It makes me feel better. And I think that it also helps others when they're communicating. And because I often do my mindset work before that, I have heard some of the worst news on video that I didn't expect, right? You can go on video and they're like, yeah, sorry, your contract is ending. I'm like, oh, I completely understand. Thank you. And you know, it's professional. You don't have to be like, what? I'm throwing my computer away or whatever. Just smile. It's not that big of a deal. Even if it is a big deal, just you deal with that later and you figure it out later. But you also want to come across as, you know, you're put together and professional, right? And then the other thing I wanted to say was self-control. It's easy to forget that video it can be distracting. So there might be things you want to do, you know, your hair is itching, you want to scratch, just like having a little bit of self-control, and just realizing, you know what, I'm on video. Any movement, especially if we're on the gallery view, any movement, I could be watching somebody and then I just see something moving. I'm like, oh, why do they just do that? It can be very distracting. So as much as you can, just stay still and do whatever you need to do and say what you need to say. And just as long as you're prepared for whatever the situation is, and you'll be okay. Then the other thing, I forgot to mention it, I also move a lot with my arm. But what I tend to do is just kind of have the camera right there. So nobody really has to see my hands moving. So like I'm moving my hands right now. I'm like, yeah, whatever you want to do. My hands are moving. Like this is what I'm doing, but you can't see it. So it's just like a little trick depending on your camera angle. And talking about camera angle, it's good if you can get it to eye level. I know these are pretty much simple things. I'm sure you already know this stuff, but if you can get it to eye level, it prevents it feeling like we're looking up at you, you know, like, oh my goodness, she's looking down. And, you know, all of this affects the way people perceive things, you know. They might be like, oh, I always knew she was so haughty and she thinks she's better than me or whatever. Or even this way, like, you're just kind of like, oh man, they don't have any confidence. They're, you know, we're looking over them. So all of it is just stuff that I'm sure you already know. So this is more of a reminder, right? So that would be about video. And then when you're speaking, just try to enunciate. Even if you're a soft speaker and you think it's polite, try to enunciate what you're saying, because your video might lag and people might not be able to read your lips. They need to understand what you're saying. And then it's also good to be cognizant that there are different cultures. So your tone matters as well, the way you're saying things. So for me, I'm just gonna bring it out. I'm like a passionate Black woman. And when I'm passionate about things, my voice can get higher and I'm really passionate. And some people might be like, oh my gosh, what is she upset about? So I have to be aware of that. Like, I'm not angry, I'm just passionate. So in some of those conversations, you want to be aware of it, depending on who you're speaking with, that your tone is important in what you're saying. And because you're not physically in front of each other, you don't want to create this atmosphere where it feels hostile, but you weren't really trying to be hostile. You're just trying to get your point across. So I would just say be mindful of your tone in presentation, and kind of gauge your audience whether they understand. So the way I would talk to my brothers on video is very different from the way I would talk to a client on video. Of course, that's obvious, right? But in just enunciating and trying to be engaging and just trying to make sure that they know that I'm coming from a place of just trying to solve the problem, not I'm trying to be hostile in anything. So, and then especially if it's like in a group meeting, try to take notes, because you might get bored if it's going for a long time. At least scribble something, take notes. It seems like it makes you look like you're focused. Like you're like, oh yeah, so the timeline. Okay, what else? The milestones. Okay, you might not be taking notes about anything, but some people like to drone on and on. And so when you're taking notes, you look focused. You might be taking notes on your computer. That's fine too. I like to use a book because I feel like it makes me look more focused. But just joking. But you can have a note on your computer, but try to take notes. It also helps you to remember for next time. And then afterwards, the last part is first thing I do is I reward my child for being a good listener. I'm like, thank you for not interrupting my meeting. You're awesome. Whether it's a big hug or some kind of bribe that I promise, give it to her. And then just pay attention to items and the way you respond to whatever it was that happened during the meeting. So if you're in charge of the reports or something like that, just letting people know, okay, I did pay attention to this and this is what you're expecting from me, and now you have it. And you just send that off. And then just being cognizant of the time of the meeting, how long it's supposed to take, make sure you're ending on time, all of that. And then I forgot, like during the meeting, I forgot one thing. If you can try meeting post, that also helps you to get yourself together. Oh, my internet is unstable, so I might freeze. I don't know if I'm back or I'm frozen. I got the notice that my internet was unstable.
You're okay,
But
you were
so if you try to get, okay, so during the meeting, before the meeting, if you can try to get there 5 minutes ahead, it will help you to just be calm and focused during the meeting. So if you have any technical difficulties, you don't have to be trying to fix it during the meeting, but you can fix it before the meeting. And you're there to even have like the chit chat right before the meeting starts, as opposed to using the meeting time to try to catch up on things and trying to get that engagement and stuff like that. So those are my tips for having a professional video presence. I hope it was useful. So any questions, any additional comments?
Awesome. Nice job.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you so much. What's your opinion on etiquette on like staying on mute? Because I remember you mentioned about like, so yeah, when we're in Techstars, our managing director, he makes a lot of jokes and then we're on mute and then we're laughing, but then there's no feedback. So it's kind of this sometimes funny thing. And so it's like, is there a part where it's like we're all not on mute and then go, I don't know, curious if you ever kind of lead meetings in that way?
Yeah. So I've been in meetings where we have to not use the mute button. And it can be distracting sometimes because yes, we want engagement, but there's also outside noise. There's the ambulance going by and whatever. But I think for your particular situation, you can say, unmute yourself and laugh and put yourself back on mute. Just like if I'm having this conversation and I like my daughter's doing something crazy and I want to threaten her life, but I don't want you to know that, I could quickly mute and be like, I will kill you, and do it with a smile so you don't know, and then get back into the conversation. So my recommendation, depending on what works for you, unmute and be like, ha ha ha, that was funny. And of course, the exaggerated response with your smile already shows that you're laughing, kind of thing, and you're like, and then unmute and you're like, that was so funny, and then go back to being on mute, just because there's so many people and it can be weird. But if you're sure that it's really quiet around you, then you know that's fine, you can unmute as well.
I've got a question. And sorry, I joined a little bit late, so we may have covered this earlier, but I'm curious if you have some thoughts on lighting and how to potentially like get some better lighting if you have low light areas, if you're going to be on video, whether some, you know, best practices or some pro tips around how to get the lighting you need if it's not natural lighting.
Oh, if it's not nice. Okay, so I didn't talk about that at all. But for me, what I would like is natural light. Right now, I'm sitting right in front of big windows. But if you cannot get natural lighting, some things that I've done is even just like a table lamp, just putting it kind of directly in front of you. As long as the light is facing you and not behind you, it's just a lot better. The better the light, the better it will look, right? So you can get studio quality lighting and you'll be sweating the whole time, but you look good. The quality lighting is very hot. Or you can just use like table lights or something like that, and then just like let it shine on you, and you as long as they can really see your face and it's not being recorded for like a professional video. This is just a meeting, right? And record it for a professional video that you're going to use for advertising, then you would want to invest in studio quality lighting and maybe a bit of makeup.
I've got something I'd like to add to that I posted in the Slack group, and that is I've got some cheap Chinese smart bulbs. I'm going to show you here. Maybe I'll show you. Yeah, you can see them. There we go. I've got 4 of them just like dangling from a like a $12 multi, you know, outlet cord that's plugged in. I mean, it's really just a very rednecky setup. But the reason I did that is I've spread the bulbs out a little bit, and I can control the color temp either as a group or individually. And so I did that with an eye toward video, because I can change the brightness, and like there's one kind of up in front of me a little bit that kind of fills the top of my head. It acts as sort of a key light. And there's one that's sort of kind of behind me a little bit, and that makes my background kind of come in a little bit. So I used to be a photographer for newspapers, so I think about that a little bit. So that's, and like the 4-pack of smart bulbs is like $20. So
That's a great tip. So I don't have anything else. I don't know if you have any questions, any thoughts, and I'm here to answer your questions. And it's been a great experience. Thank you all for listening and for coming and for engaging with me.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, pop in if you have any more questions, but I wanted to try this thing because I appreciate, it's something that I've learned on a YouTube hot wing talk show host or talk show that I watch. So he brings guests on and it's really great. And they, you know, just this and that. I really appreciate you doing this for us, Osayi. So I'd love to give you the opportunity to tell us what you're working on, like whether it's your company or just promote something you're promoting yourself right now, just for us. And thank you for your time.
All right. So right now I am working on, I don't know if I'm freezing because I keep cutting in and out, but I hope you hear it clearly. I am working on an affiliate management online summit. I'm really excited about it because there are quite a few people who want to get into the industry, but they're not sure what they need to know. So right now, I'm just looking at connecting with as many people in our industry to get them to be speakers, and then sharing it with the world so that those who are interested in the summit, they can participate. And you know how like a virtual summit is, it's free during the summit and then it's paid afterwards. But yeah, that's what I'm really working on. I'm really excited about it.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much. This will be a recording, so we'll put it up on the channel if you want to share it, and we'll share it too. And just really appreciate your time. This was fun.
Thank you very much. You were
Thank you.
awesome. So nicely done.
Yeah. I learned quite a bit in a short amount of time, and I spent a lot of time on video. So thank you.
That's great. You're welcome. Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
See you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.